Hello, how are you? For many people who are living a healthy lifestyle or want to start one, yogurt is always one of the foods on the shopping list. The other day, I went to buy yogurt at the supermarket because I usually make it at home, but I needed it for a recipe and didn't have any left. And when I checked, I almost bought a yogurt that wasn't of very good quality because the label can lead us to be influenced by certain things. So today, I'm going to teach you what you should look for on your yogurt label to buy a good quality yogurt. After all, is Greek yogurt always good or not? Is it really Greek? How can we see this? I'll also tell you about the difference between yogurt and dairy drinks because after all, a good quality yogurt is an ally for our health, for bone health, muscle mass, even for controlling your satiety and for weight loss. But when we buy a low quality dairy drink, it causes inflammation in our bodies and can even harm our metabolism. So you're going to love this video. It's full of interesting tips. Stay until the end. You won't want to miss it. Before we start, I want to ask you if you like yogurt, if it's something you have at home in your daily routine. Do you make it at home or do you buy it? Which yogurt do you buy? Is there a specific brand you always go for, or do you just buy whichever is cheapest? Write all of that for me down below in the comments. I'd love to see your response. If you can, go ahead and like the video. That's really important for me here on the channel. Besides, this shows YouTube that you support the channel, trust my content, and it also helps this video get distributed and reach more people who need this information too. There's something very important for us to understand. The thing is, the food industry sometimes uses terminology that can be a bit misleading. There is a significant difference between yogurt and dairy drinks, even though everyone puts them on the same shelf. With the dairy products, the yogurts, sometimes on the same shelf, there are two completely different products right next to each other. So when we know how to read the label, we can actually buy what we wanted and not just what the store offers us, which is sometimes cheaper. So the technical difference is that yogurt is actually fermented milk, and the dairy drink is a mixture that can contain more than 50% whey. Then you might think, whey protein, that's good, right, Patricia? But actually, no, because this whey ends up being the leftover from cheese production. It's nutritious, but it's very watery and not very dense. So it has a lot of water volume, and it dilutes the nutrients more than a good quality yogurt would. So since this whey is watery, what does the industry do? They add some kind of thickener to give it that creamier texture, which usually homemade yogurt naturally has, right? In fact, I have a video here on the channel making yogurt here on the channel at my house. And you can already see that the yogurt you make at home is already creamy, naturally. So this is often where modified starch comes in, gums, guar gum, thickeners. It doesn't mean that this guar gum or this pectin are bad products, not necessarily, because we know that pectin is a soluble fiber, and so is guar gum. The point is that many times you're buying a food that you believe is creamier, higher in protein, more nutritious, and it's not. So that's an important point for you to know. So when you consume a dairy beverage thinking it's yogurt, your protein intake is drastically reduced. Because in fact, if you look at the labels, they're different and the carbohydrate content is often higher. Because as I mentioned, sometimes they add starch to thicken it, to give it that creamier yogurt-like consistency that it often has. And then the glycemic index of this yogurt can increase. So that's something important. So you have to pay attention to the technical name of the product. Sometimes it's written on the front label, really small, so you have to look if that is actually a yogurt or a dairy beverage. That's the first thing you should pay attention to on your label. Still looking at the label, ideally we should know how to interpret it because many people don't know details that may seem basic, but are actually fundamental for us to tell whether a yogurt is of good quality or not. So check the label carefully and take a close look at the list of ingredients. First thing, when you're buying yogurt, turn it around and check the ingredient list carefully before anything else. In the case of yogurt, almost always, less is more. Because we know that the order of ingredients always follows a descending pattern, meaning the ingredient present in the largest amount comes first. So the first ingredient should be whole milk, skim milk, reconstituted milk, but it has to be milk. And ideally, the second should be the live culture, which can include several types of live cultures. Lactobacillus, Bulgaricus, Streptococcus, Thermophilus, which are usually the most commonly used ones. And this order really does matter. Since the ingredients go from most to least, if the first ingredient is milk and the second is sugar or starch, you can already tell it's not a high-quality yogurt. If the first ingredient is whey instead of milk, that also already raises a yellow flag for us because the biological value might be compromised. And then there's also the issue of additives, which sometimes are listed at the end, and we don't even end up paying attention to them. But when there's carmine or artificial flavoring, there's really no nutritional benefit for us at all, and it can even act as a trigger for increased food sensitivity, particularly in people who already have a more inflamed or reactive body. So, as I told you, ideally there shouldn't be any additives, colorants, preservatives, or acidulants. At the very least, if you can, the fewer ingredients, the better it will usually be for you. Now let's talk about something very important for you to pay attention to when buying, which is the amount of sugar in your yogurt. Because there are some yogurts out there, even the fit ones, or even children's yogurts, that can have more sugar than soda. So it's really a concerning issue for you to pay attention to. And many people are left with doubts because the natural sugar from milk, lactose, will be present in the yogurt, which is also why it's often not zero carbohydrates, because milk naturally contains lactose, which is its natural sugar from milk. So when you see that the yogurt doesn't have added sugar, usually in 3.5 ounces, 100 grams of the product, you'll have 4 to 5 grams of sugars there, because these are sugars that come from lactose, which is, after all, natural. Now, many yogurts are sweetened to increase palatability. And then when you look at the label, there can be 15 or 20 grams of carbohydrates in those same 100 grams. That's a huge difference. So it's very important to pay attention to this. Imagine waking up in the morning and consuming 20 grams of glucose, of pure carbohydrate, right away. It will give you an insulin spike. This blocks fat loss, can cause a sharp drop in glucose later on due to hyperinsulinemia, and then you end up feeling hungry as a rebound. It also increases inflammation in the body. And imagine this happening with children. There are kids whose mothers, fathers, or grandmothers don't give them soda, but buy those yogurts with little animals or cartoon characters which are packed with sugar. So this is a very important point. This mainly happens with flavored yogurts. Usually that plain natural white yogurt is safer because it doesn't have added sugar, it doesn't have any flavoring. But many times when it's a strawberry yogurt, berries, honey, or anyway prune, the actual amount of fruit is very small. Often the fruit comes from fruit concentrates, not from fresh fruit. And often it's a jam which contains starch and sugar. The jam might be at the bottom or even mixed in to give color and consistency to the yogurt. So it's really important to look at the label to pay attention to it because this is where a lot of people slip up thinking, I'm having yogurt every day, but it's basically just sugar with a hint of yogurt flavor, proportionally speaking. Another important thing for us to pay attention to is that nutritional info is often based on 3.5 ounces, 100 grams of the product. There are very few people who actually consume just this amount of yogurt. Often, if it's the liquid kind, you pour a glass that's double that amount or more. Or if you're going to eat it with other foods, you put it in a bowl and you add granola or oats or banana, plus honey on top. This can reach 80 grams of carbs or even 100 grams of carbs right in the morning. So some people say, I'm going to replace dinner with yogurt. And honestly, I'd tell them it would be better to just have dinner than to eat that much sugar and carbs. So paying attention to the label is really important. And then thinking about diet yogurt, which doesn't have sugar and uses sweetener. It's always worth checking what type of sweetener is in there. Because there are people who say, I don't want to consume any kind of artificial sweetener. For example, I don't eat aspartame, I don't consume cyclamate, saccharin, I don't want to. But then they end up eating foods that contain these in processed products. Sometimes these appear as abbreviations, so it's important to know what abbreviation stands for each sweetener, for each of those that are sold. I can even leave some of them for you here in the description. But usually it also comes written as acesulfame, aspartame, xylitol, stevia, thaumatin. So pay attention to the type of sweetener if that's something that matters to you. There are people who don't worry about this. I'm just giving a heads up for those who actually have some contraindication or have a personal preference for a specific sweetener. Pay attention to the type of sweetener that's also in processed products that you buy. This is an important point. Of course, we also have to talk about another issue, about gut microbiota and the probiotics that are present in yogurt. Because a lot of people tell me, I want to add probiotics to my routine, so I'm going to start adding yogurt. But they don't realize that many of the yogurts they buy are sold pasteurized. What is the pasteurization process? It's when the food industry heats this food to a high temperature. And then they cool it down to maintain stability. Because by doing this, they kill the bacteria, the yeasts, to increase shelf life and also to reduce the amount of harmful bacteria. Because every food has a little bit. So this is done in the industry to increase shelf life, the durability of the product. So what happens? Sometimes a person thinks, I'm buying this yogurt here, but this yogurt is pasteurized. So actually, it had live cultures in it that were inactivated by the heat. This is an important point. It's also important for you to check if it's a yogurt with live cultures. The number of colony-forming units, also known as CFUs, you have to see that the higher this number, the greater the amount of live bacteria and yeast there are. We can really see this in yogurts that are targeted at people with intestinal problems like constipation. So usually this is described on the label, and they really highlight this because it's usually even a special product. That's its main selling point. Now, an interesting detail is that the yogurt you make at home contains probiotics, because you haven't heated it up afterward unless you use it to make a cake or a pudding. But with any yogurt, if you cook it and raise the temperature, you'll kill off the good bacteria. You'll still have the protein, the calcium, that's not the issue. But if you're looking for its probiotic effect, it's worth paying attention to that. Another interesting detail is that sometimes we focus a lot on this issue of microbiota and everything, but remember that excess sugar in your diet also increases the growth of bad bacteria, and it can cause intestinal dysbiosis. So once again, be careful with yogurt that's pasteurized and loaded with sugar, because people often say, I'm going to have this yogurt to improve my gut. But it's not actually helping, because the yogurt basically doesn't even have live bacteria, and it still has a lot of sugar. So that's the point where many people go wrong. Many people want to know about this issue with Greek yogurt also because there's this idea that Greek yogurt is healthier, that Greek yogurt is more natural. And in fact, it's a different kind of yogurt that came from Greece. In Greece, they really do go through these processes of straining the yogurt. How do they traditionally make it there? They take the homemade yogurt, put it in a strainer, and use several layers of gauze with very thin cloths and leave the yogurt there, straining for a long time. The whey gets separated from the yogurt mass, and then many people ask, Patricia, so how is this yogurt healthier, higher in protein? Isn't it in the milk whey that you find whey protein? Yes, but the amount of whey protein in the whey is not the same as the amount of whey protein you buy in an industrial product, which has been dehydrated and concentrated. That's why there are concentrated, isolated, and hydrolyzed whey proteins, because it's that whey that has been dehydrated. And before dehydrating, they separate and concentrate the milk whey, okay? So there's a big difference in that regard. The milk whey you have at home is still nutritious, but as I mentioned before, at the beginning of the video, it's more diluted and has a high water activity. So, to improve the nutritional value, they remove the whey and further concentrate this mass, turning it into Greek yogurt. The issue is that many companies unfortunately fake Greek yogurt because real Greek yogurt is creamy. Since we remove the whey, not all of it, but a large amount, it becomes a kind of paste, creamy, and delicious. So what do companies sometimes do to cut costs? They add cream and thickeners to regular yogurt. And the result is indeed a creamy yogurt, but sometimes with twice the fat of traditional yogurt and half the protein. And sometimes they even add sugar because sugar also gives it that syrupy consistency. So be careful. Always check the label and compare the nutritional table. Greek yogurt usually has between 8 and 10 grams of protein per 100 gram serving. So if you're buying a Greek yogurt and the label shows only 3 or 4 grams, you can already suspect that it's probably not a true Greek yogurt, but rather a regular yogurt with added fat, some type of thickener, or even sugar to create that creamier texture and consistency. So always checking the label is important. And that's exactly how I almost got fooled at the store, because I was looking to buy a good quality Greek yogurt. And I almost got fooled by one that the label looked really nice. But actually, when I turned it around to check the nutritional information, it was full of fat and loaded with thickeners. So always check the label, okay? So you don't get fooled at the store too. Another important point that a lot of people ask me about is this issue of fat. Is it healthier to have a zero-fat yogurt, a fat-free yogurt, or a whole yogurt that contains fat? It will always depend on your lifestyle, your diet, and on the rest of your total daily food intake as well. The point is that dairy fat has benefits when consumed in moderate amounts. We know that fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, need fat to be absorbed, and yogurt contains some fat-soluble vitamins, especially if it's a fortified yogurt. So, since it already has this natural fat, it makes that process easier. There's also the issue of satiety. Obviously, whole natural yogurt will provide more satiety compared to a fat-free yogurt. So it stays in your stomach longer and slows down the absorption of carbohydrates themselves. And it gives you more satiety, making you snack less afterwards. So if you're in the process of losing weight, sometimes it might be more interesting to consume whole yogurt without sugar rather than a skim yogurt that contains sugar in its composition. Because as I told you, sometimes they remove the fat and add some kind of thickener, starch, or sugar to give it that velvety texture. So actually you have to check the label, because if it's a real skim yogurt without sugar and without any kind of starch, it will be lighter, it will be more, not liquid so to speak, but it's a milder yogurt. You can feel in your mouth that it's a lighter yogurt. So that's an interesting point for you to notice. Now, if you say to me, it's not a problem because I take my skim yogurt and add chia seeds. Wonderful. So it will always depend on the rest of your diet. So to sum up the information to make it easier for you, When you go to buy your yogurt, check the label. The fewer ingredients, usually the healthier it will be. Ideally, it should have 2 or 3 ingredients. In other words, milk or reconstituted milk and live cultures to be a good quality yogurt. And if you want a yogurt with more protein, look for a Greek yogurt. If it has 8 to 10 grams of protein per 100 grams, 3.5 ounces, it's a good quality one. And check the amount of sugar. Patricia, but I don't want Greek yogurt, but I do want more protein. Add a little whey or egg white protein or collagen or another protein you're used to consuming in powder form. You can even add plant-based protein to your yogurt. No, Patricia, what I want is more fiber, more satiety to improve my gut health. Then you can add chia seeds, flaxseed, ground pumpkin seeds, whatever you like. And if you want the flavor, you love yogurt with a bit of taste, blend a strawberry, blend a banana, control the amount of fruit, which will naturally sweeten it, making it healthier and more natural. That's how it is. Remember that I have a video here on the channel teaching how to make yogurt at home, the benefits of yogurt, the benefits of kefir, which is a cousin of yogurt. It's a fermented dairy food that in fact can even be fermented in water if you prefer. It's very nutritious and extremely rich in probiotics. And there's also a video teaching how to make it. I have a playlist of healthy probiotics. I'll leave it down below to help you. Tell me, so if this video helped you, what information did you like the most? And how are you going to make yogurt now? Are you going to make it at home or buy it? What precautions are you going to take? I would love to see your comment. Remember to like the video, that helps me a lot, and share it with anyone who will benefit and also needs these tips. Let's expand this chain of kindness. That's what I want here on the channel. See you next time. Bye.